What have you constructed that no longer serves you? What are you serving that you thought was going to serve you? Are you living fully in alignment with what you say matters? Or are you living fully in alignment with what other people have prescribed, or the culture has prescribed, or the work has prescribed should be important to you? I find often there's a enormous fissure between what really matters and what actually shows up in my behavior every day.
Welcome back to the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Andy Temte. On the Balancing Act, we talk to business leaders and industry experts to explore the balancing acts we play in our professional lives and learn about the events that put rocket boosters behind their career success. Today, we have Mike Staver joining us. Mike is an executive coach, speaker, and the founder of the Staver Group, where for more than 30 years, he's helped leaders close the gap between their good intentions and their actual results. He's a Speaker Hall of Fame inductee, a certified speaking professional whose training program was ranked #1 in the world by Training Magazine. Cue the applause. He holds degrees in business administration and counseling psychology, and he's the author of Leadership Isn't for Cowards and the just released Navigating Crazy, How to Live and Work Sanely in an Insane World, which is something we need desperately right now. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Andy, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Let's jump in. Elevator pitch version of your story.
Yeah, I born in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm one of 3 boys. I'm the oldest. Lived most of my life raised in Southern California. Wanted to be a Navy fighter pilot, and didn't happen, which maybe we'll get into, maybe we won't. And now reside in Scottsdale, Arizona. Been doing the coaching and speaking thing for a lot of years. Back, I think I started when dinosaurs roamed the earth.
Well, self-deprecation will get you everywhere on this show. Mike, if you had to pick an event in your life that just really was an accelerant for you, what would that be?
I'll tell you, I don't know if any of your guests have said this before. It actually happened in high school. And I didn't expect it to. My brother was an all-state football player. I was a football player as well, loosely defined as a football player. And I had a conflicting thing. I was in this drama group as well, and I had a conflicting date on a Saturday night. And there was a football game, and my brother and I were both in this drama group, which is kind of weird, football player and drama group. And I elected, because I was the star of the show, so to speak, I elected to miss the game so my brother could play in the game and I would do the drama thing. And so I told my coach, and he said, life's all about choices, Mike. And I said, yes, it is. And Monday morning, we lost the game. The winning touchdown went right over my position. We lost. And Monday morning, I got there. My coach said, you're off the team unless you do these things. And there were 20 things. And they were brutal, Andy. They were 1,000 jumping jacks, bear crawls. I mean, gauntlets. It was brutal.
Wow.
And I went home and I showed my parents. Only time my dad ever said, you should quit. That's egregious. You made a values-based decision. And I went back to Coach DeLatch. Fran DeLatch was his name. And I went back to Coach and I said, Coach, I have considered it. And he said, what are you going to do? He said, you don't have a choice if you want to be on this team. And I elected to stay on the team, and I did every single thing. I was sick. I was bleeding. I had sprained wrist. I mean, it was rough. But when I finished, I remember sitting on the field, and Coach came up and he sat down next to me and he said, I've never in my life would have thought that you or anybody else would do that. And he said, that's the most brutal thing I've ever seen. And what that taught me was that if you are committed to something and you're willing to endure the discomfort and pain of it, you will succeed. And it kept me on the team, and I played the next 2 years. But what the real power was the lesson that I learned, that in the midst of the fire, in the midst of the flame, sometimes you make decisions that have consequences, but sometimes they're conflicting. And if you press through it and pay the price, you're going to be much more successful. And I think that that moment, that period, that 2 weeks largely defined my future in terms of how hard I work and what I do and my toughness level.
Excellent. Well, hopefully that coach didn't use that tool again on anybody else. But
Well, you know, it's interesting, Andy. I saw him at a not a family reunion, a class reunion 20 years later. He was the best coach I ever had, by the way, the best. And he came up to me, Staver, it's great to see you, man. I loved working with you, blah, blah, blah. And I said, hey, man, you changed my life. He goes, what? He goes, how? And I told him the story. He said, I have no memory of that at all. I don't remember.
Boy, wow. Well, thanks for that story, Mike. Tell us about the Staver Group, would you? Coaching industry everywhere, all the time. What makes your firm different?
Thank you for that question. You know, if you Google executive coaching online, just about anybody can hang up a shingle and call themselves an executive coach. Just about anybody with experience or no experience can call themselves a coach. It's a messy industry, and I mean that respectfully, because there's so much noise and so much smoke and so much cloud. We do a survey every year of our clients, and we ask them, could you please give us the 3 words that most describe what it's like to work for Mike or work with Mike and the Staver Group? And then we load it into Google and the frequency of the words that are used and create a word cloud. And there's one here in my studio. The biggest word is authentic. The next one, just as large as intentional, results, purposeful, and dynamic. And I think the primary differentiator is we intersect business and psychology, but we speak the truth in love to our clients, and we're not afraid to say, this is what my observation is and truth is. I think a lot of coaches out there try to say the thing necessary to keep the practice moving. And our goal is really, we owe you the respect to speak the truth in love and care to you so that you can make decisions that'll move your business or your life or your family or your relationships forward. So the intersection of psychology and business is the foundation. But the bigger thing, I think, we have about a 98% renewal rate with our clients. And invariably they say, Mike speaks the truth and he speaks it in a way I can hear it and he's got my back. And I think coming alongside enterprise leaders or individual leaders, that makes a big difference in a world that's largely afraid to speak what the truth is.
Yeah, authenticity, intentionality.
Yeah.
Those are great drivers. I like how you have your customers' word cloud in your office there. Not what you think your business's word cloud should be, but what the actual thing, what people are actually saying. That's
and I bet you've had this experience in your life and career, where a bunch of people sit in a boardroom and come up with a bunch of words that they want to be, but they never one time say, well, what's the experience on the street? And we want it every year. We want to know, is it desirable? And is it in alignment with what we think? We compare, this is the words we would use. Are those similar to the words they would use?
Yeah. Well, let's turn to your book, Navigating Crazy, How to Live and Work Sanely in an Insane World. I like to ask this question. Suppose you're on an airplane and the person next to you has your book and you look over and it's happened to me. You well up with pride. You're like, oh my gosh, this person's got my book. That's awesome. What do you want that random reader to, in an unaided fashion, give you back about their experience with navigating crazy?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think the big thing I want them to say first is my biggest challenge is I've been trying to overcome crazy. And what you've allowed me to do is understand that there's a path through it and it isn't going away. That's number one. Number two, the only way I can navigate that crazy is if I have an anchor to something that matters bigger than myself, some sense of purpose, some sense of values. And then third, that people have a tendency to drift through life with a story that they create that makes the path easier. And I think if they could give me back those 3 things, I would be most happy. If you boiled it down to one thing, I think it's oh, I'm so relieved. I don't have to overcome it. I don't have to quell it. I don't have to eliminate it. I just need to navigate it, because I feel like we're overwhelmed in the world right now with so much going on, and everybody's trying to do the thing necessary to make the seas calm. And I just think that's a fool's errand sometimes.
Yeah, and I like how you're framing that third thing, the stories that we tell ourselves. Many times those stories that we tell ourselves are not grounded in truth, both for ourselves and the folks around us. We lie to ourselves all the time. So the premise underneath the book, Deceptively Simple or Stressed, doesn't come from our circumstances. It comes from the gap between what we expect and what actually is. And these lies that we tell ourselves likely contribute to that. And you say that you can't narrow a gap that you won't put a name to, which is why the work opens with this question that we dodge. What are you pretending not to know? So can you unpack that? What are you pretending not to know for us?
Yes. So all of us go through life, as you and I have already discussed, creating stories that make the navigating of our life tolerable, simpler, better, whatever. And there are various, as you and I know, cognitive distortions that we use to do that. We might awfulize, we might idealize, we might rationalize, we might catastrophize. There are a lot of things that we do. But if we could pause long enough to say, what do I know that is true? But yet I'm living as if and telling stories as if that is not true. And the beauty of that question is that it can mean something really positive, like I'm pretending not to know that if I went and did X, I could be successful. Or if I'm pretending not to know that my significant other probably would be open to a conversation about X. Or it could be something negative. I'm pretending not to know that a mole that I have not had my dermatologist look at could be dangerous. The danger of the pretending is that in the pretending, we construct a reality in the world that allows us to operate with full confidence on information that is not necessarily accurate. It's not wholly inaccurate. It's not wholly wrong, but it puts us in a world where we're operating in a reality that probably doesn't serve us, unless, and I mentioned this in the book, there is some pretty interesting study about denial and pretending when it comes to catastrophic illness. People who are catastrophically ill or people who are terminally ill do tend in the initial phases to do better pretending or being in denial about the severity of the diagnosis. But in day-to-day work, I'm a big believer that I can deal with what I know. It is very hard to deal with what I don't know. And a lot of people do that. They pretend that there isn't tension in their family. They pretend that they're doing a good job when they know in their heart they're not putting in their full effort. So this work of pretending, I think, is something that's largely innocently done in our childhood. We're taught to pretend. But as we get older, at least turn the dimmer switch up so we have more clarity about what's real versus what we wish was real.
Yeah, you talked about the pretending in a family construct, but in teams, that pretending happens all the time because to peel back the onion to what the truth of the team dynamic actually is, there's some pretty painful work sometimes to get from here to there that I want to press on a little bit more after the break. So let's take a really short commercial break and we'll be right back with Mike Staver. And we're back with Mike Staver talking about navigating crazy in our insane world. And how to find real steadiness in the world that's not going to let us slow down. So, Mike, I want to press on a distinction that you say people get wrong a lot, which is the difference between acceptance and approval. I suspect a lot of listeners here accept your circumstances, quote unquote, and hear resignation or being told to make peace with something that genuinely isn't right. So help us draw that line clearly. What is acceptance actually asking of us? And why does confusing it with approval keep people stuck?
Yeah. It kind of goes back to that pretending thing, right? So let's say, Andy, you come to Arizona and you call me you call me and you say, hey, I want to meet you for lunch. And I say, great, Andy, where are you? And you say, I'm in Tucson. And I'm like, okay. So I give you directions to the restaurant from Tucson, but you just landed in the Phoenix airport. If you can't accept that you are in the Phoenix airport and you cannot speak the truth of where you're currently located, the navigation to wherever the destination becomes impossible. Now, it doesn't mean you like being in the Phoenix airport. It doesn't even mean you want to fly into the Phoenix airport next time. But at that moment in time, you find yourself in the Phoenix airport. So to tell me that you're somewhere else belies the acceptance of where your current location is. I believe this is the distinction. You can go to a set of circumstances on a team or in a business or in a relationship and say, this is what, speaking of team dynamics, this is the way things are. I don't like it, but this is the truth. You cannot close the gap between your intention and your results if you cannot acknowledge and state clearly where you currently are or what is currently true. So acceptance, to my mind, has no judgment attached to it. This is the truth. This is what is real. It's not good. It's not bad. It's not right. It's not wrong. It's not up. It's not down. It's not in. It's not out. This is what is. Now, where do we go from here now that we acknowledge what is? A lot of people want to tell themselves they're in Tucson, and then they wonder why they can't navigate when they're sitting in the Phoenix airport.
Right, right. Well, let's turn this into a mentorship moment. You've got someone in front of you. I like to do these thought experiments. They look successful from the outside. This individual is sitting right in front of you right now. The career, the title, the family, the life that everybody else would envy, but they're exhausted, they're spinning, and they're quietly wondering why none of the techniques that promise so much have really delivered. And they can't point to anything that's really wrong. Well, what conversation do you have with this individual?
The big conversation I'm going to start with is the question we started with 2 questions ago, which is, what do you know to be true that you're acting as if is not true? Then the second question I would ask this person is, if you constructed your life without the encumbrances, what would your life look like? A construct without expectation of others, and you just constructed it the way you wanted to construct it, what would you do? Most people, I find, bolt complexity onto their life. They bolt things on because they get a bunch of shoulds where they feel like I should do this, or we should live in this house, or my kids should drive this car, or we should go on this vacation. So probably the final question I would ask at the start of any mentorship moment is, what have you constructed that no longer serves you? What are you serving that you thought was going to serve you? And then finally, are you living fully in alignment with what you say matters? Or are you living fully in alignment with what other people have prescribed, or the culture has prescribed, or the work has prescribed should be important to you? I find often there's an enormous fissure between what really matters and what actually shows up in my behavior every day.
Yeah. So in continuous improvement circles, there's a very simple tool called the 5 whys that is designed to get at root cause. I'm curious, staying in this mentorship moment, when you ask somebody to identify the things that the pretending that they're doing, how many whys does it usually take to really get at that thing? Because I got to imagine that in this mentorship moment, the individual's not going to, in the first crack, say, yeah, this is what I'm pretending really doesn't exist. It would take some cycles. What's your experience there?
Yeah, I do a technique called the downward arrow technique, which is basically the whys. It's and then, and then, and then. So if then, if then, if then, all the way. And sometimes, and I'm sure you've done this in your work as well, sometimes you have to deconstruct something, kind of peel away, dig through the closet before you get to it. Sometimes the pathway is a little bit clear, but I use that downward arrow. So what would it say or mean if you did not drive that particular car? What would it say or mean if you did not live in that particular house? What would that say or mean about you? Wherever we start at the top, and I don't prescribe where people start. I just want to meet them where they are and then dig, 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 dig. Usually in my experience, it gets down to what I said a minute ago, which is what I say I value is not what is manifesting itself in my life. And some people believe that has to happen. I mean, you got to pay bills. I got to pay bills. Sometimes we've got to do the thing, but it is, I love what you said about, what you say, the rocket pack or the jet pack we put in people's, I love that phrase that you use. It's so brilliant.
Yeah. The rocket boosters behind your
rocket boosters.
career. Yeah. So let's go back 14 years. Leadership isn't for cowards. The very first step in your courage framework was to accept your current circumstances. And your author bio back then described you as the guy who confronts leaders with the truths they're pretending not to know. And now that idea has turned into this entire book. What changed in you or in your world that made this the book that you had to write now?
Yeah, COVID was the first thing. That was the first thing. 80%. I did the final keynote for a company, a client at the Wynn Hotel in Las Vegas on March the 10th, 2020. And I remember walking out, and you probably remember where you were.
Yeah.
And I remember walking out, and Andy, they literally locked the doors of the Wynn as I walked out of the Wynn Hotel. And I thought, wow. And I said to my wife, well, if this if this lasts a couple of weeks, I think we'll be fine. You remember how we rationalized and negotiated with ourselves back then?
We did. Mm-hmm.
And within 48 hours, 72 hours, something like that, about 80% of my speaking business evaporated. And I didn't know what to do, really, to tell you the truth. And so we started a campaign, and I told my team, we're just going to help the hurting. That's all we're going to do, help the hurting. Doesn't matter about money, doesn't matter about anything. And I did a program called What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do. And we had 1,800 people on this webinar. And all the questions in the chat and everything was, how do we navigate this difficult set of circumstances? And I got more of it and more of it. And then my coaching practice really exploded. And last year, I was talking to a CEO. I was walking into Trulux Seafood in Plano, Texas, and they said, we need help. And there was something that was ignited in me that said, I got to write it. And so I did.
Excellent. Mike, what have we not talked about today that you want to make sure our listeners take away from your work in this conversation?
I think the biggest thing, Andy, is that peace in our lives does not happen as a result of things or as a result of processes or frameworks or structure. Peace starts to happen. The navigation starts to happen despite the waves, based on our ability to do what needs to be done in the relationships that we have every day, to say, I've done what I need to do. I have found myself in a space where I am at peace with the relationships, both to work, to family, to friends, to significant others, so on and so forth. I think peace doesn't mean calm necessarily. Peace doesn't necessarily mean all is well. It just means I am satisfied that I have done what I needed to do to be where I need to be, to navigate whatever comes my way.
Excellent. Well, Mike, let's close with a couple of lightning round questions. Have a little fun, shall we?
Yeah.
So, Mike Staver, you've just won a $100 million lotto jackpot, but there's a stipulation that half of your net winnings go to one philanthropic organization or a general cause. Who do you pick?
Sex trafficking. Phoenix is the intersection of pretty aggressive sex trafficking and labor trafficking. My wife really has the heat around this topic. She went to the Dominican Republic and worked in a sex trafficking rescue house. I think that would be the first one. The second would be there's a lot of organizations drilling wells in countries that don't have fresh water. But what they're not doing is they don't realize that the heavy limestone content in the dirt in the ground leaches into the well and creates brackish or salt water. So it's no longer good. And I have an organization that puts solar powered desalinization equipment in those villages. But here it's not because of the water, Andy, and this is what's interesting. It's because in those villages, women are largely charged with carrying the containers to the river to get water. And what water in a village means is that women are now empowered to be able to get educated and do the things necessary to advance themselves. So it'd be those two things, I think.
Awesome. And you are the first guest to say either one of those things. So that's awesome. Mike, if I give you access to a really little time machine and you can send a message to an earlier version of Mike Staver, what's the message and what previous version do you send it to?
Previous version meaning age?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
A previous version of you. Yes.
Yeah. That's such a great question. There'd probably be two. My first choice would be when I was about to graduate from high school and I was at a fork in the road relative to schools. I had been accepted in one school and I would say to him, pursue the thing. Do not let anybody get in the way of pursuing the thing. You're going to have a lot of noise, a lot of voices, a lot of things. And then the second, which is related, would be when I went back to graduate school. Right before I went back to graduate school, I was really successful in business and I was just a jerk in my personal relationships. And I would say there is a way to blend that. And I think you need to navigate this with a little more peace and grace. I had to get a lot of bumps and bruises and therapy and a lot of things to navigate through that. But I'd say there is a way, and that way is very navigable.
Yeah. Well, Mike, I think that's a great segue to the final question, which is we're all works in progress. We're all learning. We're all growing, or we should be. What are you focused on right now in your personal journey of growth?
I am focused on how do I replicate myself without it being myself so that I have more freedom. Right now, I do not feel the sense of freedom that I would like to feel. I sometimes feel like I set out to build a sports car and I built a bus. And so what I'm really, because my number 2 core value is freedom. Authenticity is number 1. And I think I've got that nailed, but I'm really working on making choices that move to freedom, not to a fancier self.
Well, Mike, where can folks get a hold of you?
If they go to Mike Staver, MikeStaver.com, they can look at all the cool stuff that's going on at the Staver Group. If they want to go directly to the Navigating Crazy page, they can go to MikeStaver.com/Navigating Crazy, or it's on Amazon as well. But MikeStaver.com is the best place. A lot of free resources. They can sign up for our Mondays with Mike videos and that kind of thing. And I think they could get a lot from there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Mike.
Thanks for having me. Great interview. I really appreciate the depth and thoughtfulness of the questions. So thank you.
Well, my name is Andy Temte, and this is the Balancing Act Podcast. You can find the show on all the major streaming services as well as out on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, rate, and most importantly, share this public educational good with your friends, your family, your neighbors, and maybe a colleague if you like them. The show was produced by Nick Temte, and we'll see you next time on the Balancing Act.